Thanks for jumping into another podcast episode brought to you by Bad Tabletop Gaming. Your hosts are Bill, Armin, Andy, and Dan. If you are a new listener, welcome and thank you for your support. If you're a returning listener, welcome back and thank you for your support. Before we kick this new episode, we want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tony at Hammerhead Games, who has a variety of MDF and plastic cut gaming essentials from army trays to objectives and much, much more. And Matt at Pop Goes the Monkey, who has a large inventory of top-notch upgrade bits and specialized add-ons for the models in your collection. Links for both pages can be found in the descriptions of our videos. Lastly, if you like what we are doing, please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit us up in the comments, as we love all the feedback you give us to help us improve the channel and podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Andy here from Bad Tabletop Gaming. This is another podcast of ours, and today I have Armin with me, and
Hey guys.
also have James here with us again.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, good. And yourself?
Oh, pretty good. It's as we were talking about, pretty hot here, so it kind of fits the theme of Ball Secundus.
Yeah, no kidding. Pretty good. No demons here yet, though.
No.
But yeah, James is a big fan of the Blood Angels. As
Yes,
guys
that's
in the
an
community
understatement.
So he's been doing some work on his army. He's got some lovely reds going on and whatnot. That's awesome. You've probably seen it on the pictures if you're part of our community and stuff. So yeah, so Blood Angels, the excitement in the blood.
Yeah, the best legion, the quintessential legion. You know, the Angels of Death. I'm pumped. How do you guys
Nice.
feel?
Oh, it's awesome. It's
I was really excited when they came out. That's for sure.
Yeah.
go ahead, James.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, like the models, the rules, like, you know, I think Sanguinius, right? Like I think he was the Primarch that everyone was excited to see how they were gonna do him, right? Because he's the most, I guess, physically different of the Primarchs, and they have the most, you know, flexibility in terms of pose with him. So yeah, I was pretty pumped when the previews kind of leaked of him.
Oh, for sure.
Not just that, but I feel like if you ever look at any artwork that's like iconic artwork to even 40K, right? It's Sanguinius, Horus, and the Emperor.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I think when somebody talks about 40K, or if they're like, you know, show me 40K or anything like that. That's the one piece that I always think about. I'm like, yes, that's the, you know, that's the art.
To this day, I think my favorite piece of not just any Games Workshop art, but of, you know, science fiction art is the super famous, you know, from the early 2000s, that scene where you've got on the bridge of the Vengeful Spirit, right? Horus standing over the dead Sanguinius and the Emperor, right? Like before 30K was a playable game, like that art was there, you know, the Visions of Heresy, and that art actually, you know, was a redo of an even older piece from the 90s. It may have even been the late 80s. But yeah, like it's just kind of quintessential Age of Darkness, right?
I know when I started playing 40K, like that older picture you're talking about, yeah, that was one of the ones that really stood out, right? Like it's like, who are these guys? And then you start reading into stuff and you're like, wow, that's the story right there.
Yeah, and it was, you know, when that original piece of art came out, like the story hadn't been fleshed out at all. It was, you know, the Emperor and the Horus Heresy was still very much, you know, like whispered about and just excerpts and snippets here or there, right? You know, I remember prior to Horus Rising and the trilogy, like the first Horus Heresy kind of opening trilogy, right? Like you'd get white dwarfs. You know, that had like quotes or snippets about the heresy, and like you'd bookmark them or cut them out because the lore was so few and far between. You know, I still remember Google imaging that old, the early 2000s trading card game where so much of the Heresy art is from and still influences, the models today, right? Like that was the first time we ever saw Cataphracti or the jet bikes. And for me personally, visually, I always thought the Emperor's Children and the Blood Angels looked so badass, right? So regal, so the antithesis of what 40K had become, with the I guess decay of technology. Like everything's so grand and regal in the original art of the Heresy.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And there's a lot of beautiful out there for Heresy. That is for
Mhm.
sure. So yeah, we'll jump right into the questions, and you've probably already touched base on some of this, but what drew you to the Blood Angels? What possessed you to go to the Blood Angels when you're looking at the Legions?
Well, it's kind of a long and sordid story. So, I know we were talking about when we did the World Eaters video, how World Eaters in 40K were one of my first, 40K armies. And I loved painting red. So when I was looking at doing, loyalists, and 40K, the kind of the Blood Angels were kind of the logical choice. Again, super close combat army, very I guess ruthless in their combat. Um, and this was way back, well, not way back, but I guess it has been a few years now in fourth and fifth edition. And um, I remember being on the Games Workshop page, and it was like the Saturday morning that they released the new models for pre-order, and the Sanguinary Guard models went up,
Mm,
and I was just blown away. Um, and I thought to myself, holy man, like I need to play this army. And as Armin can attest, we played a lot together back in fifth edition. I
Yep.
was a huge fan of Mephiston. Back when Matt Ward was in his heyday writing rules. So Mephiston was essentially like a demon prince that was the size of a space marine, so you could hide him behind anything. And there was just so many cool things. There was the Death Company. There was the Death Company dreadnoughts with the blood talons. And back when they first were released, the blood talons had those ridiculous rules of every wound you caused could generate another attack, with no cap. So you could have one dreadnought run through 30 orcs. So that was that was what got me into the Blood Angels originally. And of course, for Heresy wise, I had to wait a long time. Blood Angels are one of the last legions that they did. But yeah, I remember the second that the first rules were leaked, and the first rules appeared in the prior to the current Black Book, I was already brainstorming lists and trying stuff out. And now that they're
nice.
fully fleshed out, they're just such an awesome army.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, quite a different army though too. They got a lot of options in their armies that in the army I didn't think they were going to have. Um,
Totally.
but
Yeah.
but unique, you know. So that's awesome, and we'll get into that as we jump into the units and whatnot. So cool. We got yes, favorite rite of war for the Blood Angels.
Oh, okay. Do you want to take a guess which one I'm gonna go with, or?
Is it just the one they have?
So they
No, they
they
have
they
two
do
actually.
have two. They have the Day of Revelations and the Day of Sorrows. So I am definitely a Day of Revelations guy. Um, and the Day of Revelations is pretty much the best possible rite of war you could wish for doing a pure jump army. Um, it's just it's awesome. It's epic. It's overwhelming, and it's so cinematic. So yeah, I definitely have to go with the Day of Revelation.
It's Blood Angels. Like
Totally. It's Blood Angels, and it's you know it's it's the angels of death, right? Like they're
yeah,
literally descending from the heavens, raining fire and retribution down. And you know, I'm a big fan of flavorful um, names of rules. We've talked about. One of the best written rules I think is in wreathed in lightning they rend the veil for the thousand suns. But this rite of war, like cometh the host with fire and thunder, opening of the seal, like those are just the names of the rules.
the
It sounds like
judgment of
yeah,
angels.
like it's Armageddon, right?
Pretty much.
So it's pretty awesome.
Nice, nice. And yeah, we can get into those a little bit later as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, now the units. The question we always ask everybody too, right? In these 4 questions. But out of these Blood Angel units, which one would you say is your favorite?
So I'm pretty partial to the Dawnbreaker cohort. I think, just the imagery, right? This is a legion of jetpack assault units. And the Dawnbreakers pretty much, they are the embodiment of that. They've got, the wicked spears, they've got they're the um, first Space Marine jump infantry actually on flight stands. So they're a little bit, they're like, mid-air. They're not like every other Space Marine jump infantry unit, which is running on the ground for some reason. So I definitely have to say them. The Crimson Paladins are really cool looking, but just due to other reasons, I can't honestly say that they're my favorite.
Yeah. And they got a few different units, that's for sure. Crimson Paladins, Dawnbreakers,
And the Dreadnought.
and the
The
Dreadnought.
the
Yeah.
Incandius Dreadnought, which is he's cool.
And then the Angel Tears as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Armin, what about you? Do you have a favorite for those? For Blood Angels?
I really do like the Terminators, right? But
Oh.
I only like them, the Crimson Paladins. But I only like them because of how they look,
Yeah.
right? Like, honestly,
Fair
like
enough.
in game, there's a lot of things that I feel like they lack, right? But that said, though, they look amazing.
Yes.
I do like, honestly, the Dawnbreaker cohort, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's exactly what you said too. Like they're what I think Blood Angels should be, right?
Right.
5 weapons, 2 attacks, veterans, 2+, armor. So are they? I guess I don't know enough about this, but are they supposed to be your sanguinary guard? Is that kind of like?
No. So that I think
No?
that was part of there was some, I guess, controversy around that. So I think Forge World, when we've looked at what their releases are, um, they've never done like a straight up duplication of an existing Games Workshop model. Games Workshop did it the other way around, with the Scarab Terminators are essentially the same as the Sekhmet, but they're again a different mark of armor. Forge World opted not to do Sanguinary Guard, and I think the reason is because honestly, it's the same armor, it's the same gear. There's no reason to basically redo a plastic model. And in terms of the fluff, the Dawnbreaker cohort kind of exists as you know, um, a shock assault unit. Like I think whereas the Sanguinary Guard are very much more kind of that bodyguard unit, right? They are the the bodyguards of Sanguinius. They are the bodyguards of high up senior Legion commanders. So they don't fill necessarily a frontline shock troop role.
Okay.
But to be completely honest, if Sanguinary Guard did exist, their rules and stats would probably be very similar to the Dawnbreaker cohorts. But yeah, definitely point of contention. I know a lot of people, have converted Sanguinary Guard with spears to represent the Dawnbreakers, just because Sanguinary Guard are such an iconic part of the Blood Angels, and Dawnbreakers really have a different aesthetic.
No, definitely.
Okay.
Pretty neat though. It's they didn't come out with these models yet, did they?
Yep, they're out.
Or they
Yep,
are.
the Dawnbreakers are out. Yeah, the Blood Angels actually, got fairly fortunate, right? The newer legions, the entire line of models for the Blood Angels has been released with the exception, excuse me, of Judicator Crone. So basically,
Oh,
all
okay.
the units, all the special characters, minus one have been released. So that's pretty nice, especially because for those waiting to do the Blood Angels, they've been waiting for so long, right? So it's not like they have to wait another 4 years to get a trickle of models.
No, I hear you on that. I'm still
Nice,
waiting on a
right?
few for my Ultramarines.
Yeah, the Ultramarines got shafted. Yeah, they're still missing the jetpack guys and the Terminators, eh?
Mm-hmm. and their name Dreadnought too, right?
Oh
Telemachus.
yeah.
So, but here's some swords and boards, and that should be good enough for you.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, that's awesome though. Like anybody who's starting Blood Angels, it's all right there for you. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I like that. Forge World, if you're listening, we need more.
Well, that's another thing too, right? So not only did they get all their special units, but they also, they got the upgrade packs, of course, but they also got the Leviathan,
Yep.
their unique Leviathan, their unique Contemptor, and their unique Praetors. So, yeah, like they honestly, like I think they might be. You have to jump in if someone can think of another legion, but I think they're probably the closest legion to being 100% model represented for rules, with them only missing the one character. I don't think any other legion has everything represented that way. Maybe Space Wolves. I'm not sure, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not. You'd think some of the earlier ones, like Sons of Horus, but yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, but they don't have
Right.
Malagurst, right? Like there's still a few characters that are like,
Oh, that's
missing
right.
from.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if any of the guys who are listening or watching this on YouTube, if you know, chime in. Let us know. So yeah, so here's the big question, the big juicy question that everybody loves. What is your most favorite fluff story, whichever from
Ooh.
Heresy for Blood Angels?
Oh man. I'd have to say the siege. So it hasn't been fleshed out yet. That my two favorite moments. They're getting really close in the Solar War series. But I'd say it has to be a toss-up between Sanguinius's confrontation with Horus on the Bridge of the Vengeful Spirit. I think so many Blood Angel fans are dying to see, what went down and the chink in Horus's armor, if that, because the mythos is that basically Sanguinius, put a chink in Horus's armor, and that's what allowed the Emperor to, one-shot him basically. And again, I'm sure they're gonna fluff it, fill it out with more details, or they might retcon stuff. But as it stands, the idea of Sanguinius going in there, confronting Horus, and yes, being slain by Horus. It's just what better way for a Primarch to go out than at the hands of the Arc Trader. And in the fluff that's released so far, they make it sound like, yeah, Horus killed him, but he was so, epic and so mighty and so formidable that Horus had to actually resort to a psychic attack to overwhelm him and then ultimately kill him because, he couldn't overcome him with just martial skill. And keep in mind, this is after Sanguinius dueled Kabanda and threw him, from the sky onto, the broken ramparts of Terra, which is my second favorite heresy moment. Sanguinius's, rematch against Kabanda and owning him.
Nice.
So the one thing that I really like, and I mean spoilers again, so if you don't want to hear it, just skip ahead a little bit. But it's the, man, I'm gonna lie now. Raldoron?
Yeah, Raldoron.
Yeah. Against the Painted Jester. Was that Raldoron?
Yeah. The painted prince. The Night Lords guy.
Night Lord guy. Is it Prince, not Jester?
Yeah, I think it's the painted prince. Yeah, the guy with the demon sword.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I don't remember, but now I can't remember his name. So if you guys have it, like, let us know or let me know what it is. But that fight, if you haven't read it, is probably by far, like, it's an awesome piece of writing, and just how, the Night Lord guy is so amazing and just massacring everything, right? And he fights Raldoron, and he heard about how Raldoron is so awesome at fighting, and he is kind of not, I don't want to say he's owning Raldoron, but he's doing really, really good, right? And Raldoron's basically barely surviving, right? And then all of a sudden, the demon sword, betrays him, basically.
Abandons him.
Abandons him, yeah, of course. And then at that last moment, he starts fighting, and he describes it, because it's from his point of view, and he describes it as if he's moving underwater compared to Raldoron, because then, when he doesn't have that demonic speed and he's just a regular space marine, I think it takes Raldoron 2 strikes and the fight's over.
Yeah,
right?
well, and I think, it's just owned.
Yeah, exactly. And then at that point he realizes what a fool he's been, because literally he was nothing without the demon sword. I mean, that lesson to him with the demon sword, right? The demon sword clearly tricked him for that reason, right?
Yeah, well, the demon sword even mocks him and says, he's like, you thought you could take on Raldoron? He is like a god of battle.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of, it's funny how even you almost get this jealous feeling from the sword, that what would a demon be able to do with somebody like Raldoron, right? And that's probably why Abaddon's becomes who he is, because he's already a god of battle, right?
Totally.
And they take him, and that's why the Primarchs, where this demon sword or this demon or whatever is just, he's only got garbage to work compared to other.
Some chump Night Lord.
That's right, but it was such a cool, story, because that's exactly it. Everybody knows Raldoron, right? You know who he is, and everybody in basically the galaxy knows of him, right? And there's maybe a handful that were able to stand up to him and actually, barring a Primarch, can actually stand him and fight, right? And even the demon sword, with all his help, he was winning, but he was still, it wasn't a one-sided fight either, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to reread that battle, because it was a good one. I think that moment and kind of what you're describing captures one of the coolest parts of the heresy, right? Which is, especially if you guys haven't read, the Solar War series as it's kind of ramping up, is everybody knows the Primarchs. They're these super demigods, right? But there's that top tier of Space Marine, right? Which, includes the likes of Abaddon, Corswain, Raldoron, Sevatar, and the relationships that they have, right? How they're, some of them dread facing the others on the field of battle. Some of them anticipate it and are looking forward to it because they're the only challenges. And I think for the Blood Angels, right? The Blood Angels are one of those cool legions that have a few of those characters, right? There's Raldoron, there's Alkezion, I can't ever pronounce his name. Um, you know, and they're those top tier guys, the equivalents of Abaddon and Typhus and all of their, I guess, dark mirror counterparts that fell to chaos and ultimately are still around in 40k and are near Primarch power.
Nice. Yeah, some good stories to come ahead if you haven't gotten there yet. Obviously, Armin and James have read a fair bit, so.
Well, I haven't read the newest book actually. I keep meaning to get it, but
it's really good, and there's some Blood Angel action in it too for those that are interested particularly in the Blood Angel stories, and there's actually kind of one of those face-offs between Abaddon and a super famous Blood Angel, so it's a lot to look forward to.
Nice.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get that right away.
Very nice. So yeah, I guess that was the good enough for the questions there. So we'll be moving on to the army itself now. So
fun part, the breakdown.
Pretty much, yeah. That's where everybody gets to chime in on the good stuff. So, and I'm sure we'll have guys looking at it too and commenting, like always. So yeah, if you agree, disagree with us, hey, put it in the comments. And we'll tackle those together and
hate it.
Throw some to James. Got questions for him, all that stuff. Get Armin going. That'd be awesome.
James answered. He's answered quicker than we do, so.
Nice. So, and you guys want to do the reading? Would you like to, Armin, or shall I start off here?
Sure.
Okay.
No, I can start with the army a little bit here.
Okay.
So they've got their regular rules. So in Carmine Fury, right? So when fighting using a melee weapon, any model with the Blood Angel special rule requires one lower result to wound that they would normally, up to a minimum of 2+. So this effect applies regardless of the weapon that they're using. So if normally it's 4+ to wound, then they get +1, right? So this is really, really good because it basically applies to any melee type weapon, right?
Yeah.
Anything in close combat. So
nice.
that's really, really awesome rule. It definitely gives them that benefit and that edge that they would get in close combat, right? Which is where they excel when you think about it, right?
And I think unique amongst the Space Marines, that rule single-handedly makes them the best at fighting, at least in combat, demons and Mechanicum, because those armies, you're facing so much high toughness. Whether the Space Marine is strength 4, strength 5, or strength 6 in some cases, with like World Eater chain axes and whatnot, they'd still need a 6 to wound, a toughness 8 demon. Whereas Blood Angels have the ability that a basic Marine, because everything wounds on 6s, are wounding those guys on 5s now. So that's really big, and especially also against other serious close combat armies like Custodes and stuff. It gives them a significantly higher chance to hold their own in combat.
That's right. It's not +1 strength, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely just +1 to wound, right? And you're right.
That's ugly.
Difference, right?
That's ugly with the what is it, Divining Blade?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of sick, monstrous close combat combos, and just being able to have tactical Marines thrown into a Thanatar or the not what are the other ones? Not the Thalax cohorts. What are the medium ones, Armin?
Castellax?
Yeah, the Castellax. Having basic Marines go out against them and wound them on 5s. You're doubling their effectiveness essentially against that unit. So whereas before, Mechanicum, it's a no-brainer to charge, into a unit of, tactical Marines or assault Marines, because like, oh no, 1 Power Fist is in the unit. Well, here suddenly it's like, okay, well, I have to make double the amount of saves now.
Yeah, like you're actually going to have to make saves now.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it makes a huge difference. The next one is the without remorse, without relent. So models with the Allegiance Studies Blood Angel special rule, of course, must always make sweeping advance rolls if they're able to, and may not voluntarily go to ground. So the going to ground can kind of hurt you if you're trying to,
Hide
survive.
in ruins. Yeah.
Right. So that's a little bit of a negative, right? And always making sweeping advances. Again, we kind of talked about it last time. Like, when would you ever choose not to make sweeping advances?
Yeah.
So I feel like this was just a little bit of a negative, because like the sweeping advance on whatever, but the going to ground, I think, can hurt them a little bit, but it's not like overwhelming, right? And then the host of angels. So with the exception of dedicated transports, a detachment may not have more units with the vehicle type than it has Legion of Studies Blood Angel special rule. So note that because of this, certain right of wars may be unavailable to Blood Angels. So this is interesting. I like how they say with the exception of transport, because I know there's a few right of wars that don't say that, so it makes it really difficult to kind of plan out your army, right? So this I do like. I don't really know how this rule like plays with the fluff, because I think Blood Angels do run lots of vehicles sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe they.
So it's one of those things where you kind of see a divergence from the 40k universe and the 30k universe. So in the 40k universe, Blood Angels field a lot of Land Raiders and Ball Predators, but the reason that is because their vehicles, for a combination, survived the heresy a lot better.
Okay.
So, of course, from anytime you've got a limitation, that's obviously, a negative thing for an army. In terms of how this in actuality limits the Blood Angels, well, if you're looking to build I guess a powerless tank army, well, Blood Angels aren't the Legion you'd choose. But if you wanted to do, because they do have access to basically make ball predators with assault cannons, so this would limit your ability to take, a pure ball predator army, for example. But other than that, it's not a crippling limitation, but it still sucks.
Yeah. Or like if you're trying to run lots of javelins,
Yeah.
because I know that they do them.
Yeah.
It's just showing a little bit of the flavor to the army, because it's more than likely you're going to be a lot of boots with jetpacks, right, or jump packs.
Totally.
So.
Right, and again, right, like is it a limitation? Yes, but it's not. It's not crippling. It's not huge. It just means that you're not going to see, pure tank armies or pure flying armies, or
Oh, for sure.
But you could still run very tank-centric armies because, like Armin pointed out, dedicated transports don't count. So, you could run, 5 tanks and have 5 rhinos with 5 tactical Marines and it still be a legal army.
Yeah. Back with us, Armin?
Yeah. Something happened. I don't know what happened.
That's all good. It's all good.
Warp storm.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I was just going to make a comment of the warp as well. Very nice. Very nice. So that was like their basic army rules.
Yeah, that's their Legion Astartes rules. Overall, I think, again, if you take the negatives and the pluses, I still think they weigh fairly heavily on the pluses, especially because if you're going to be playing Blood Angels, you're probably going to be playing a little bit more assault centric. So the limitations aren't going to hurt you as much, and the buff is really going to buff you. So it definitely gets a thumbs up from me as far as the Legion Astartes rules go.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I think they kind of fit, right?
Yeah.
Too. Like I like that they're encouraging you to do close combat because as they should, and I feel like not many people out there would go in and build a list of Blood Angels that isn't heavy close combat. But it's kind of nice to see it reflected in the rules as well. So
and even and we'll get into it as we go into the units. Even like there are some very viable and very strong Blood Angel shooting lists that don't involve a lot of close combat, but they're really helped by their rights of war and stuff. So it's not they're still very competitive and very between their rights of war and their war gear, which they've got access to some pretty good stuff. So yeah, overall, I'd say it's really good, and you got to give Forge World credit, right? Because being one of the later legions, how do you make 18 legions have 18 unique sets of rules when some of the legion's specialities overlap, right? Like we talked about world eaters, there are space wolves. Even Dark Angels are somewhat, with their swords, a combat-centric army, Night Lords, Sons of Horus. How do you make them unique still without all combat armies having hatred or all combat armies having rage? And I think this was a really good, unique way to do it for Blood Angels.
Agreed.
Yep, for sure. So moving on to, they got some specific war gear.
Yeah, the Fires of Heaven.
Yeah.
So yeah, I basically any model that has access to a Volkite Serpenta can instead take a Hand Flamer for 15 points. Any model that has access to a Plasma Pistol as part of their war gear option may take an Inferno Pistol. And we'll kind of cover on what some of the benefits of that is, but the final item is any Praetor, Centurion, or Consul can take, instead of a Power Fist, a Blade of Perdition for 20 points. So Blades of Perdition are, again, one of those kind of really synergizes well with the Legion rule because they're Strength User, AP2, Mastercrafted, two-handed, and have a rule called Deathfire, which is any model successfully wounded by it suffers 2 wounds for each hit instead of 1. Now, the wounds, they change the wording in the current Black Book, so the wounds cannot spill over. But still, you're fighting a monster, a demon, another character, and you're doubling up the wounds that you do, and they have to roll twice as many save rolls. And what's more is it's striking at initiative, which we all know is huge, especially that golden number is AP2 strikes at initiative.
Mastercrafted
Because
as well.
yeah, and it's mastercrafted, and again, right with the Blood Angel right, you're going up against another, say Space Marine character with a Power Fist or a Power Axe or anything, and you're wounding him on 3s because you're 1 better to wound, and you're doing double wounds to him. So it's very, I'd say, anti-monster, anti-character, anti-elite unit, right? Like there are these guys can mow through Custodes, probably more efficiently than any other Space Marine, because unlike a Power Fist, if you get a wound and the Custodes don't fail their saves, it doesn't instant death them, whereas this, each wound has a chance to potentially kill the Custodes if they fail their invuln saves.
Yeah, sure.
That is true, yeah, actually. Didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and hand flamers, they're not the greatest. Strength 3 template. They're great, for fighting horde armies, and just throwing fistfuls of dice. I don't know if I'd pay 15 points for one. But yeah,
I think
they're
it's a
good at.
little overpriced,
Yeah, I think
right?
so too.
I think they're a little overpriced. I mean, they are pistols, right?
Yeah.
So they do give you the extra attack in combat, which is nice.
Yeah, and you can have
I think,
two of them. Like you're able to arm two of them. So if
yeah,
you've got two pistols.
Almost a countercharge weapon, though, in a sense,
Yep.
too, right?
Yep. They're very good at the the wall of flames. So if you're dual wielding them, you've got 2d3. So that's it's good. But I think Armin hit the nail on the head where I
I
would
don't
pay
know if you
five.
can. I don't. I want to interrupt. I don't know if you can dual wield them in while overwatching. That's something that I've never seen, and I don't know what it says. It might just say one weapon.
Oh yeah,
So you
yeah, maybe.
double
Yeah,
check.
maybe you're right. I don't know.
Either way, it doesn't matter, right? I think overall, I think just the price point's a little high.
Too much.
I'd
Yeah.
love to see them a little bit cheaper. But I think we kind of talked about that last time too, about pistols being too high. Period. Right? Lots of them, like plasma pistols and
I
fusion
agree.
pistols, and being a
Yeah,
little bigger than they should be, right?
the unique, so the really good one, and I think one that stands out to a lot of people is the Inferno pistol, right? Especially for an army that deep strikes, gets up close. Inferno pistols are pretty good, but what makes it very unique is I'm trying to think. I think salamanders are the only other legion that have access to the Inferno pistol, right?
Legions, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but unlike salamanders who cannot take more attacks, blood angels can take more attacks.
Yep.
So you can have a dual wielding melting pistol, Moritat, which can do some crazy work, especially when you're ballistic skill 5. And yeah, you can get a lot of hits. And I definitely have popped Warhound Titans with a dual wielding fusion Inferno pistol Mortat. So really cool, really good combo. Yeah.
I would argue not realistic to pop one of those with a fusion pistols, but that's fine.
But yeah, no, I don't know. I think again, right? Theme of Blood Angels, Heaven, Wrath, Fire. So it makes sense that they have the Hand Flamers and Inferno pistols. And again, right? I probably wouldn't take a plasma pistol ever on a character. But I might take an Inferno pistol, especially if they're a deep striking unit that if you're with Sanguinius, you're not scattering, so you can guarantee to get in that, that inch and a half away from the enemy vehicle and get the 2d6 armor pen. So definitely synergizes well with the army.
Nice.
And then, of course, the like the Imperial Fists, they get the Elastus. Correct my pronunciation if it's wrong. Assault cannon. So, for those of you that play 40k, you're very familiar with the assault cannon. In 30k, it's 24-inch range, strength 6, AP 4, heavy 4 rending, and it does have malfunction in 30k because they were basically beta testing the weapon, which is, when you're rolling to hit, if you roll 3 1s, then the assault cannon malfunctions. It may not be used again this game. So Blood Angels have the ability that any model with a heavy flamer may exchange it for a assault cannon for 5 points, and that's for infantry, and then any vehicle may do it for 15 points. And yeah, it's the Predators too have a special option where they can exchange their main turret for a twin linked one. So you're able to make the ubiquitous ball variant Predator. So again, it's assault cannons are a very versatile weapon, and this one I actually think is pointed appropriately. Exchanging a heavy flamer for an assault cannon for 5 points, definitely I think is a good deal.
I think so too.
And
it makes sense. or 50 per vehicle.
Yeah. So yeah, 5 points for an infantry model.
Yeah.
And then 15 points for vehicle model. So that's also interesting because I mean you usually don't see assault cannons on infantry though, right?
Yeah, so it is, and we'll talk about it when we get to the other units. But just today I was building a Angel's Tier squad with 10 assault cannons, and I think that's kind of one of the go-to units for the Blood Angels, and one of the ones that I was referring to when I said you could build a very shooting-centric list with them. Because again, deep striking 10 assault cannons behind an enemy tank is pretty scary, especially with the rending.
Yep.
Very favorite weapon, I should say, the assault cannon.
Yeah,
so.
and again, I think it's what makes it a little bit more impactful in the 30k world is that only Imperial Fists and Blood Angels have access to it, right? So right off the bat, Blood Angels have access, to 2 weapon types, essentially, Infernus pistols and assault cannons, that previously were only available to 1 legion, and they get both. So options, of course, is variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Nice.
And it kind of makes sense too because it's kind of by fluff, right? They've always, had those 2 weapons, so it's kind of nice to see that they were included.
Yeah, right. Again, one of the benefits of the Blood Angels is they were, I think as the heresies kind of went on, and more information has been released about, kind of the non-Space Marine perspective, you learn a lot more about the politics, right, and how certain legions were perceived better by the populace, and were diplomatic. And I think Blood Angels were definitely one of those loved legions, so they had access to the top of the line war gear. And experimental war gear, and of course, when they were defending at the end on Terra, it makes sense that how could you not have an how could you have an experimental weapon like a assault cannon and not have it stockpiled on the home world for the final battle? So yeah, it makes sense.
Definitely does. So yeah, so that's the gear, and now the rights of
Right of
war.
war time.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, well, you guys will forgive me for jumping in and taking and
No,
covering
you
the first
go
one.
right ahead, man. This is all yours.
You guys can fight over the second one. So this is the Rite of War that I am quite a big fan of, with the awesome names. So the Rite of War is the Day of Revelations, and even the name, it invokes revelations, right? Like angels coming down from the sky.
I'm
so
hearing a booming voice when you say that.
Yeah, right. Like just epic. So cometh the host. So jump infantry squads, which are part of this detachment, must arrive via Deepstrike on the first turn of the game and do not need to roll for reserves. That rule, in my opinion, can make this army incredibly overwhelming to deal with. The downside, of course, is I like having options, and anything that takes away your options, especially in a competitive game, hurts you. So not being able to hold units in reserves, it can hurt you. It can suck, especially if you're going up against, knights or, thanatars, or depending on the scenario. But, when you're talking about every single unit that has jump infantry, that could be an entire army. You could have 2,500 points of Blood Angels in your face turn 1.
Oof.
Yep.
And I think the second rule with fire and thunder really helps. So all deep striking units in this detachment gain a 5-up cover save on the game turn in which they arrive in play. Now, what's really unique about this is, obviously an entire army getting it is pretty good. So units that might not always have an invulnerable save, it adds to the durability. Now, one thing that kind of sucks about it is it does specify the game turn and not subsequent turn. So, I know like a lot of people, like myself, I often, especially if I have an all deep striking army, I would want to give my opponent the first turn, so that they essentially waste a turn of shooting. Then I come down. You only benefit from this essentially if you're coming down first, because it doesn't go to the next turn. So a little bit of a drawback, but hey, you can't have everything.
Do you think that's an error?
Sorry, do I think what?
Do you think that's an error?
No, I think it was on purpose, to be honest. I think it forces you to make a decision, right? And I think it more importantly, if your enemy say wins the roll off and they know you're all coming down, they're gonna probably give you first turn, right? Because they're gonna want to shoot. They're gonna want every turn they can to shoot at you. So I think this softens the blow in those situations. I think it would be too good if you could give your enemy first turn, waste their entire turn of shooting, and then get a 5-up cover save on their subsequent turn of shooting. I think that would be a little bit too good.
Okay.
So the third rule, opening the seal. All ranged weapons carried by infantry and jump infantry, which are part of this detachment, gain pinning in any turn they deep strike. So, again, it can be quite a good rule, especially if you're fighting armies that aren't immune to pinning, or might have low leadership, or again, just forcing your enemy. If you force your enemy to make enough dice rolls, they're gonna have some bad rolls. So if you're shooting at a bunch of units, odds are one of the units will fail their check. So it's good. I wouldn't say it's game changing, but the fourth rule, and this one is a game changer. This one is huge. All units which are part of this detachment and have the Legion Astartes Blood Angels rule gain +1 initiative on the turn they charge into assault. So this rule, I cannot, overstate how significant it is for a combat army. At the end of the day, being able to strike before your opponents, especially when the vast majority of the game is made up of Marines, being able to hit your opponent before they can hit you is golden, because it means that they're not swinging back, and the less attacks they have swinging back, the more guys you're going to have alive, and on and on it goes. It also makes characters a lot better in duels, a lot better at fighting other characters, especially when you've got things like, the Blade of Perdition, where not only are you striking before, power fists and chain fists, but now you're also striking before, regular Marines. And in a post-Custodes world, being able to strike simultaneously with them is quite significant, because their stupid spears will reap a huge tally on your units, and having that opportunity to strike simultaneously with them is really going to help your damage output, because half your unit could evaporate and they wouldn't even have an opportunity to strike normally. So that's a big one. Armin, Andy, any thoughts or stipulations on the initiative piece?
No, it's unreal, right?
Yeah, it's very good. And then the final one is. Oh, go
Again,
ahead.
it makes sense with the army.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
Blood Angel. That's what they do. They kill
and-
stuff in close combat.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at initiative, the only other Space Marine army that really plays with initiative in that way, or has war gear that allows them to, is the Emperor's Children, with some of their initiative things, like I think it's the Phoenix Power Spears, or is it their Terminators? I can't remember if it's the Terminator or the Spear or both. I think it stacks. I think they actually.
yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's nice. It's a good ability.
It just shows like
Uh,
even with like the Blood Angels and Emperor's Children of their prowess in their speed, right? Like
totally.
the initiative. Like when I think of initiative, I'm thinking of the martial skill and the speed of the characters and the units and whatnot. So to me, this makes complete, like, total fluffy sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. Where the world leaders dominate combat through just
brute force.
fury of
Yeah.
attacks and strength. Blood Angels do it with speed and skill and precision, right? Even like we're talking about their +1 to wound. I don't visualize that rule as just raw strength. I visualize it as they're going for the weak spot. They're going for the the coup de grace. So yeah, I think very very fitting.
The calculation in their head of the like you were saying, the weak spot in the opponent.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, by honor bound, characters with the Blood Angels rule must always accept a challenge if one is offered in the combat. If multiple eligible characters are present in the combat, the controlling player may choose which one answers the challenge as per normal. So, again, anything that takes away your ability to choose, I consider a drawback. This one, they're a combat army, so more often than not, you'd probably want to be challenging, but definitely,
But you just accept challenges, right? Like you don't
exactly.
have to issue them, right?
Sorry,
Yeah.
what?
You don't have to issue the challenge. You just have
Exactly. You have to accept it, right?
Yeah.
But so it's better in that way. But let's be honest. If you're in a situation where you want to issue a challenge, you're going to issue a challenge. If you don't want to issue a challenge, your enemy probably wants to issue a challenge. Right, and it's a good way to get your characters slaughtered by Angron, or your apothecaries slaughtered by Angron. This rule, no denying the challenge and hiding in the back.
But that's Blood Angels, though. So
yeah,
that,
exactly.
It kind of makes sense, right?
Well, yeah, they're the paragons of the Imperium. For all their flaws and their curse, they're still the most beautiful Space Marines, right? They talk about that, time and time in the fluff, where most Space Marines are kind of disproportionate and cause transhuman dread. Blood Angels are actually beautiful,
majestic.
Right? Like the Ultramarines, they look like Greek statues, but I don't know if anyone would be like, oh, hot damn, that guy's a catch. Whereas the Blood Angels with their flowing Fabio hair, the ladies might swoon over.
Fabio hair.
Yeah,
fair enough,
right?
though. He is true. If you look at the pictures in the Black Book, it definitely shows
Totally.
the flowing hair.
Yeah. So the limitations of this rite of war, compulsory HQ and troop choices, must take jump packs. Not really surprising, given if you're taking this rite of war, you're going to be wanting to take them like that. The rite of war must take a compulsory fast attack choice as part of their force, which must also either have flyer or deep strike special rule. So again, it's not particularly what I would view as a limitation, whether you want to take a javelin or a lightning or a Xiphon, or there's lots of options, and there's lots of cheap options that allow you to get around this without really affecting your army if you aren't keen on it, right? Like, how many points is a bare bones land speeder? Like 30. So a 30 point tax, worst case scenario. And then, of course, the primary detachment may not take fortifications, subterranean assault units, or immobile, and they may not take Lords of War other than Flyers or the Primarch Sanguinius. So again, if you're playing this style of list, I can't really think of, a Lord of War that you would take other than Sanguinius or, one of the flying Lords of War. This isn't exactly a list that screams super good synergy with a glaive tank, for example.
That's right.
But yeah, I'll pass it off to you guys to talk about the Day of Sorrows, which I happen to think is a very sorrowful rite of war.
I can talk about it a little bit. We've got the resolute defense, right? So in a unit with Blood Angel special rule, part of the detachment cannot be pinned and is fearless within 3 inches of an objective or in their own deployment zone, right? Or of wrath, so any unit which suffers a morale check as a result of losing assault, which the majority of the enemy models have the Blood Angel special rule, takes an additional -1 leadership test. Of course, if you're immune to fear, you don't, you're immune to this ability. And then by Blood Sworn, when any unit with the Legion of Sire special rule or Blood Angel special rule as part of a detachment is reduced to 50% or less of its starting models, the remaining models gain Feel No Pain 5+ from the beginning of their next turn and last for the remainder of the game. So just to kind of say, like, I don't know, I didn't read the fluff on this, but this sounds literally like they're defending.
This is
This is Cygnus Prime.
This
and,
is the
and
last
also
stand.
Yeah.
Like this,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that. I was just actually reading a little bit of the fluff on the top there, and this is literally like, the last stand.
Siege of Terra, Cygnus Prime. Yeah. This is a very defensive rite of war.
Yeah, so if you're playing like a campaign style game and you're playing one where you're on the walls of Terra, this rite of war actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? According to the fluff.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, don't get me wrong. If we talk about the rules, like, the Feel No Pain, if you're 50% less, is really good. If you damage the enemy unit in combat and they suffer -1, it's good. Being fearless within 3 inches of objective or deployment zone is amazing, right? So it gives you those things where you can actually stand in your deployment zone and defend. Negatives, though, characters must issue and accept challenges. So again, we kind of talked about this a little bit in the previous one. And then to the bitter dregs.
Yeah.
So any one of the units, again, Blood Angels that are reduced to 50% or less, number of models count as being destroyed at the end of the game and are no longer scoring, right? So I guess depending on the objective game, right? But if you're playing a fluff game where you're standing back and just like defending, yes, it's kind of a big one, but kind of makes sense.
This is, everything else aside, this rule for me is crippling.
Yes.
Right? So losing the ability to score, huge. Huge. There's no way to slice it, because now suddenly, instead of needing to kill my enemy units, all I need to do is get them down to half health, and they can't get objectives. What's I think what's salt in the wound is, if you get them down to half health, not only can they not score, but they also give up victory points.
Count as destroyed.
Yeah. So, I'll be honest. That rule could be put on any rite of war in existence from a gaming perspective, and I probably would have to give the thumbs down to that rite of war. Like, you could put this rule on Guard of the Crimson King, and suddenly I don't know if I'd want to take Guard of the Crimson King. It's that impactful from a gameplay perspective.
Well, it's a double whammy, right?
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's crazy.
Very true.
This
true. That said, though, I think this one is intended to be used as a
campaign. Yeah,
for sure.
In fluff, rite of war.
And that's what I was just gonna say. This kind of just going through this and reading a little bit of the fluff on the top there of the black book, this completely reminds me of the movie 300.
Yes.
Right? Leonidas and his
Yeah.
Spartans, and they're there to the man, and that's it. It's just,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think we see that in a lot of Rites of War, where there's kind of an optimal one, and then there's I'd say a suboptimal one or a more fluffy one. I think this one just disappoints me because I think you could have the perks. Yeah, those are fine. Those the three effects are I'm totally fine with. The limitations, yeah, the bloody-handed challenge thing, sure, put that in. To the Butcher Dregs, I wish it would have been, I think one or the other would have been a significant drawback. I just think that taking two is just rough, right? Like, it's definitely an uphill fight, and I get that that's what they're trying to portray. I just I don't know. I just wish it was one or the other. I guess if I could write the rule.
Definitely.
Or at least give them hatred demons too. Something.
That could have done it.
Or traders, right?
Yeah,
Like
hatred traders. Yeah.
Right? Well, I mean, ultimately, I think that's exactly what this rule is, right? Like this rule is to, or this Rite of War is when you're playing those games, and we're like, okay, James, you're on Walls of Terra. You literally are using the beautiful terrain that you've built because I know you have it, and you're sitting there and you're defending against whatever army I throw at you with the trader army, right? And then you pick this one and we go at it, and I don't know what the mission would be, right? Like I have to, you have to hold the walls or whatever you want to call the mission, right?
Yeah.
But maybe this Rite of War that negative doesn't impact you as much because of the style that we're playing, right?
And that is fair. And one thing I know we haven't really talked about because it's not really in the format, but in the Blood Angels Black Book, there is the whole Cygnus kind of campaign, and those missions are they're theatrical and they are suited more to this, right? Like it's by no means supposed to be the whole if you look at the fluff, the whole concept of Cygnus wasn't supposed to be a fair fight. It was supposed to be an ambush of this legion to utterly destroy them. The fact that the Blood Angels survived is a testament to their badassery, right? So, yeah, I agree with everything you guys said on that.
Nice. Okay, Rites of Wars are done. Now to the units.
Ooh, yeah.
I think James is itching on this first one.
Yeah, Dawnbreakers. So, 210 points for the base 5, and 25 points apiece for an additional 5. Now, this is really kind of, important because once we go through the rules and stuff, the points economy that you get out of this unit compared to other units, like if you were to take the Emperor's Children, Palatine Blades and gear them up equivalently, you're looking at like significantly more point cost. So they're a pretty good bang for your buck. So we'll go through the stats quickly. They're base Marines, with the exception of having 2 attacks and a weapon skill 5. And the champion actually has 3 attacks and a leadership 9. So,
and 2+ saves.
Yeah, they've all got artificer armor, right? So that's nothing to laugh at, especially when you're looking at 25 points a model to add on. Like normally artificer armor is 10 or 5 to 10 points alone. So you're getting a pretty good deal for 2 attacks, weapon skill 5. But let's go into the rest of their war gear because this is where I think there's some really positive things. So they have the option of being equipped with they come stock with a falling star pattern power spear. So this is very much a assault, charge weapon. So when you are in combat normally, it's two-handed, AP3, and strength user. But when you charge, it's +1 strength and AP2. So very, very, very good, I'd say, when you look at the Legion perks. It's very similar to, the Phoenix Power Spear or the Custodes, weapon minus the bolt gun on it.
Yeah.
So pretty good for an assault unit. They do have the option to exchange it for the Equinox Power Blade case for 5 points, which lets you use one of two weapons. You get to choose before making any attacks. So you can either use the Sunrise Blade, which is Strength User AP3, Shred, and Keen. Keen is +1 initiative value, basically. And then there's the Sunset Blade, which is AP3, Rending, and Sunder. Now, in terms of aesthetic, I definitely think the dual wielding specialty blades is really cool. But overall, I think you're way better off with the Power Spear. I think the +1 strength and the AP2 on the charge really are significant enough to take them pretty much as stock, and especially because they're cheaper. I was kind of befuddled, honestly, to see that you're paying points for the blade case. Do you guys have any kind of thoughts? Agree, disagree?
Well,
I mean, I think the spear is unreal because
Yeah.
when you charge, you're hitting it most likely. I guess depends what Rite of War you're talking about, right? But if you're hitting at a higher initiative, right, and then you're wounding on twos,
Yeah,
right,
wounding on
that's not
twos.
even Rite of War, right? Like most
Yeah.
things, you're wounding on twos, and it's AP2, like that's
Yeah.
unreal. You're gonna rip apart Terminators. You're gonna rip apart majority squads. That's a huge, huge, huge deal.
Yeah.
I mean, again, they suffer from that. Be charged. If they're charged with anything that has 2+ armor, they kind of will suffer for it.
Mhm.
But I mean, really being Blood Angels, you're not really going to be charged tons. I mean, you have the range usually, right? And so, it makes them really, really good. And again, the you compare them to the Emperor's Children, which are very similar to these guys. I mean, point for point, like these guys just are so much better.
Yeah.
Literally what like the Emperor's Children unit, whatever they're called. I don't
The Palatine Blades.
Palatine Blades, like it's what they should have been.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, to make a Palatine Blade, so to make a Palatine Blade armed with a Phoenix Power Spear and Artificer Armor, even with their point reductions and jetpacks, you're looking at over 40 points a model. I think it's like 45 points a model or something. To add a model onto the unit versus the 25 here. And we're not even done going through these guys. So, one thing to note, like you said, if they get charged, the Equinox blade case, it's good for, I guess, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just not as, I think, impactful as the spears.
You get more attacks with it, though, right?
So basically, yeah, you get one attack because it counts as two combat weapons, and say you get charged, you do have a rending one. So there's the option, which is nothing to laugh at, right? And if you charge two, right, like four rending attacks isn't bad. 4 attacks with Sunder isn't bad against weak vehicles, and even again, depending on what you're fighting, striking at +1 initiative and rerolling wounds isn't bad either, especially with their Legion trait. So don't mistake my love of the spear for dislike of the sword. I think the sword should probably be the same points as the spear, and then it might be a little bit more of a contest. But when we go to their here's one of my favorite omissions from this. So they've got the grenade discharger. Now it's worth noting to those with keen eyes under their war gear that Dawnbreakers they're not armed with frag grenades. Or crack grenades. Now one would think, hey, they've got a grenade discharger. So, they have a frag and crack variant. It's still rules as written. They in theory, if you're charging through terrain, would not have the benefit of frag grenades. Now, quick way to get around it, obviously if you're playing a friendly game, just talk to your opponent, because I can't imagine why they'd be the only Marines in the entire game to not have grenades. And if you're playing in a tournament, just make sure that you've got a character with them that has grenades.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting.
I would be very careful with that, because I think the grenade rule is by model, not by.
Oh, is it?
I
Yeah,
think
maybe
so. I
you're
would have
right.
to double. While you talk about it, I'm gonna look at it right now.
Double check. Yeah. So yeah. So the grenade chargers, they're little wrist-mounted weapons. The frag grenade, 12-inch range, strength 3, AP 6, assault 1, 3-inch blast. So again, if you're going against hordes of, you're going against a cultist heavy list, what are they called? Solar Ox, any of the cult militia, or even demons late game, when they're weaker toughness, you can put on some hurt with, blast, and then strength 6, AP 4, assault 1, 12-inch range for the crack. So, still a good weapon. One thing that we didn't cover yet. So on top of their war gear.
Let me interrupt.
Oh yeah.
So I have some assault grenades here, basically.
Yeah.
So it says, note that in all cases, models equipped with frag grenades are considered to have frag grenades. So in assault, it says models equipped with assault grenades don't suffer the penalty for initiative when charging.
So yeah, don't charge them through cover.
It's a really weird rule. You're right, because it really doesn't make sense.
I think it's definitely a mistake, right?
I think it's a mistake. Yeah.
Irrelevant if you argue that they're overpriced or underpriced or whatever. It just does not make sense that no other Marine, none, does not have frag grenades. Bikes have frag grenades. It just does not make sense, except Terminator, I guess, right?
Yeah, but even them, at least their dischargers let them count as it, don't they?
They do, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
so it's what the heck? So one other thing to note, they do have a special rule called Set the Sky Aflame. When they deep strike, all enemy units within 6 inches immediately suffer D6 Strength 4 AP dash hits. So, again, nothing game changing, but you're throwing out extra Strength 4 hits. It's never a bad thing. The entire squad can take melt-a-bombs for 25 points. This is very good bang for your buck, especially if you're running a 10-man squad where you're essentially only paying 2.5 points per melt-a-bomb. So, by giving them melt-a-bombs, you really are making them a super versatile unit, because suddenly now they can charge knights and stuff and tanks and all that stuff and do a significant amount of damage. And then the final war gear option is their champion can swap out his spear for a Blade of Perdition for 20 points. Now, I probably wouldn't. Again, depends what I'm playing against. You think about it, a champion with 4 attacks with a Blade of Perdition, that's potentially, 8 wounds. So you could kill 4 Custodes, 4 Elite Terminators. You could kill any of the big demon monsters. But I don't know.
It's a lot of points. 20 points is a lot of points.
Yeah, 20 points. And
champion.
Again, the blade. I guess it's good for those situations, like Armin said, where if they get charged, at least then you've got a guy that can still cleave through Terminators.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I'm kind of neutral on it. I depending on how many points. If I had 20 points to spare, I would definitely give it to this guy. But
in a challenge, because he'll have to accept it, right?
Yeah.
That
Very
could be
true.
that could be a good option.
Yeah, so overall, I definitely think it's pretty standard, right? A lot of units champions have the access to take a power fist for
Yep.
between 10 and 20 points depending on what it is. So Blade of Perdition, yeah, it's a good weapon.
Yeah,
So
very very good unit overall. That's for sure.
yeah,
So-
overall, and we'll talk about it when we get to them. But there is something that allows you to unlock these guys as a troop choice. Which is very cool. So I love these guys. I'm doing up a unit of 10 of them. It's a very expensive unit, but again, especially where these guys are so cheap to add on, because anyone who plays 30k knows about the point tax for MSU, right? 30k really rewards you for running max size units. Because you're paying 210 points for the first 5 of these guys. So, basically 40 points a model, whereas to add on to them, you're only paying 25 points. So I definitely run these guys in units of 10 if I'm going to run them. Units of 5 just aren't necessarily worth the points economy.
But they're still really good.
Oh yeah, they're still good. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I would still take them, in a smaller game. I mean, if I had the option, I wouldn't take 2 units of 5. I'd take a single unit of 10. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So next up.
So yeah, thumbs up for them. Yeah, Crimson Paladins. Do you guys want to cover that one, and then I'll throw in my
Sure.
shade at them.
So yeah, Crimson Paladins, 160 points for 3 of them.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Pricey.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, especially when they're pricey.
So they're 1 wound terminators stats with their exemplar, which is I guess the sergeant, has an 1 extra wound. Leadership 10, which is different.
On the whole squad, too,
Yes.
not just the exemplar. So that is a buff. And the exemplar also gets an extra attack, which is not normal for Terminator champions.
Yeah, there's a few out there, but yeah.
So their so their transport option is they can numbering 5 or less, they can take a Phobos as a dedicated. Wherever that's applicable, however you're building your army. But they're in cataphractic Terminator armor. They have a power weapon, and they have the Coriolis pattern power shields. So I'll just explain that one there. The Coriolis pattern power shields reduce the strength of all melee attacks targeting a model with the power shield by -1. So
this is interesting because, like we talked about their special rule, right? It was +1 to wound.
Yeah.
Where this is the strength.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not as effective against things that are really strong, but is effective against things that are close-ish to your range.
Yeah,
right?
and I think another thing to note too is it's only melee attacks, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of people were super excited when the models were leaked because everyone assumed they'd have storm shields, which is awesome because who doesn't want a 3-up invuln? I think these are underwhelming because, like you said, the strength factor. If it reduced the wound roll by 1, I think that would be more significant. Or if it reduced the strength of all attacks as opposed to just melee. But especially when you're looking at the model and it's like this gargantuan, elaborate, ornate shield that looks like it was better crafted than half the Primarch's armor. And it's like, oh yeah, you're -1 to strength in close combat. Woo, right? Like, yeah. I definitely think it's a little bit underwhelming.
So that's what they start off with for gear. So you could get 2 additional Crimson Paladins in the unit for 40 points each. Also, any of the models in the squad can exchange its power weapon for a Sunset Blade, which we talked about earlier there. For free.
So that's the Rending Thunder one. So.
Yeah, so it's kind of It's kind of
It's
an
it's
auto.
auto.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, like
Why
you're
wouldn't you?
literally for free. For free, you're gaining rending and sunder. So like, it
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense why you wouldn't take it.
And then they have the option, so a single Crimson Paladin in the squad may exchange their Coriolis Power Shield for one of the following weapons. The Elistus Pattern Assault Cannon for 10 points, a Heavy Flamer for 5 points, or a Plasma Blaster for 15 points. Yeah, I don't know. They don't really have any shooting other than that, do they?
Yeah, and like again, this is one
Is
of
it
those
worth it?
things where I probably would upgrade one of them because as long as the majority of like you just put him in the back, right?
Mhm.
And the enemies that are targeting the unit are still at the -1 strength in melee. Um, I I think it's somewhat lackluster, but maybe a heavy flamer because they're again an assault-oriented unit. So I could see taking a heavy flamer on the squad. But
Yeah. They're, I don't know. I
So,
kind of
so is there a weapon like it says power weapon or power sword?
power
Don't the
weapon.
models come
It's
with
a power
swords?
weapon.
yeah, sorry, it's a power weapon. So I guess yeah. Uh, so you could take sorry, that is a good note of distinction. So the models are equipped with power swords, like the actual physical models, but yes, you totally could convert them into power axes, and that actually, thinking about it, probably is your better bet in terms of if you want them to be, effective against other elite units.
Well, but the Sunset Blades also have rending too, right?
Yeah, but again, right, the +1 strength of the axe combined with the Blood Angel rule is pretty good because then at least you're wounding like a power fist from against most Marines. You're not instant deathing them obviously, but yeah.
And speaking of power fists, so yeah, so like then the next option here. So 2 of your Crimson Paladins can exchange their power weapon for a power fist at 20 points per model.
Yeah, so I take a lot of issue with this. So not only is this the most expensive power fist in the game, um, you know, every other unit that can take power fists, it's like either 10 or 15 points. I think some Terminators, I think Sekhmet can upgrade for 5 points, can't they?
I think so. So
Like something
Isn't a
like
lot of Terminators just 5 points for a power fist?
yeah, yeah. Like so, not only is it weird because only 2 of them can do it, and it's like, why 2? Like 2 just is a random number. But 20 points, like you're already paying a premium for these guys. Like think about it, you're taking a 5-man squad of them, and they're essentially 250 points. So these are 50-point Terminators. So on par with cost, with the siege tyrants, the red butchers, you know, um, significantly more expensive than Sekhmet. Um, yeah, like it's just a lot. It's a lot, and then you add, you add those another 40 points of power fists, and you're looking at like a 300-point unit. So they're 60 points a model on average. Like it's bananas.
So is it me or is it like the Loyalist Terminators, Legion specific Terminators, are just kind of mediocre? Like
Yeah, I
that's
think
what it seemed like. The Loyalist ones seem that way to me.
lackluster. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
when I think of like really good ones, I think the closest thing would be the fire drakes.
yeah,
Fire drakes are the 2 wound storm shield. Um, so that those are good. Those are good Terminators. For the longest time, Vulcan and Fire Drakes were the Death Star
yeah. That's true.
for early Heresy, right? Like I'm sure we all remember, in the first few years, Salamanders were like tough. They were scary.
Yeah,
You see a Salamander,
they were on fire.
yeah, you'd see Vulcan roll up in in his Spartan with his fire drakes, and you're in trouble, especially because this was before Mechanicum had Haywire and stuff. So like, I'd say they're pretty strong. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Imperial Fist ones, although they're not special, the ability to take storm shields is, I think, makes them, pretty good. Varagar for the Space Wolves, they suffer from these guys, which is one wound Terminator syndrome, right? For elite Terminators, one wound is just, it's underwhelming, and I'm trying to think what other loyalist Terminators. I guess there's the Ultramarine ones that don't have models, but again, at least you're getting a Cyclone missile launcher on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree in terms of and yeah, the Eben Keshig. Now that I think about it too, those guys, again, they're not trash, but they're by no means, Sekhmet or, even Grave Wardens and again Iron Tyrants. There's just so many good traitor Terminators.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't really compare it to Sekhmet, right? Like, let's.
Okay, well, even Justarin, right? Even Justarin, even. I guess the only ones that are really bad on the traders, I'd say, are the Phoenix Terminators for the Emperor's Children, just because they're overpriced.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. I mean,
yeah, and they're not bad.
You match them up against, what is it, the Gorgon Terminators, and
oh yeah, I forgot about them.
And they're good.
yeah, you're right. And at least they have the AP2 on the chart. So I you guys know I like to harp on Emperor's Children and Raven Guard a lot. And there are redeemable factors. I shouldn't be so harsh, but
all good.
Overall, I think you summed it up, Andy. Traders win for Terminators.
So continuing on with these paladins, so their exemplar can switch out for a blade of perdition for 10
which
points.
Is an auto take for 10 points, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then of course they can take a grenade harness as well for 10 points.
Yeah.
So they do have one of their special rules. Of course, they have stubborn, they have deep strike, but they have the blood is forever. So while locked in combat with this unit that outnumbers them, a Crimson Paladin squad gains Feel No Pain 5+. If outnumbered by more than twice their number, they instead gain Feel No Pain 4+. Independent characters that join a squad do not gain it, and do not count for the purpose of being outnumbered. And then, of course, they count as 2 models for bulky rule and all that stuff for vehicles and stuff.
I think this rule, it isn't bad, of course. Anything that buffs you is good. I think what really sucks about it is if you take a 5-man squad, you're really reducing the odds of you getting the 4-up Feel No Pain, because then suddenly you basically need to be fighting 10 or more Space Marines to get that Feel No Pain. I think that overall, I'll just say it, I think they're a disappointing unit rules wise for how much you pay. I think when I saw them for the first time, I was thinking, holy man, these guys are going to be armed with Blades of Perdition and Storm Shields. And at the very least, I thought, when they talked about their war gear, I thought we'd see a weapon skill 5, 2 wounds. The fact that these guys are 1 wound is a point against them. The fact that these guys are weapon skill 4 is a point against them. The fact that they don't have Blades of Perdition and they're essentially modeled with power swords, or sunset blades, is a point against them. The fact that you basically need to only have 3 of them in a unit if you reliably want to get the 4-up Feel No Pain is again a point against them. I think again, I've seen a lot of posts where people are defending them, and they're like, "Well, yeah, but if you use them this way, and if you fighting tactical Marines, well, yeah, then they'll win, of course."
Well, tactical Marines. Like,
but honestly, like, in order to I just way rather have regular Terminators, to be completely
Yeah.
honest. Like,
yeah.
I just am really, I think in terms of units with a disparity between rule of cool and rules, these guys are probably the biggest. I think they're a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10 in terms of badass model, and they're a limp noodle in terms of elite Terminator rules. So
Easily 10 out of 10 for the like model. Like,
oh yeah, like I
easy.
think they're probably one of the best on. I think they probably are, in my books, they are the coolest, unique looking Terminators.
Yeah, like they're just the way they look, right? I hope somebody out there, like, guys, if you don't agree with us and you think that they're the best, you want to tell us about it, please do. I mean, if you want to talk about it next week and you want to come on and tell us, like, I'd love to have somebody come in and tell me that these guys are good for their points, right? But yeah, I think they're just a little underwhelming. I agree, right?
Yeah. Again, I think the Blade of Perdition on the champion. I think the standout in this unit is by far the Crimson Exemplar, because not only he gets a second wound and he gets an extra attack, and for 10 points, a Blade of Perdition is totally worth it. Suddenly, you've got a guy, a 2-wound Terminator with 4 attacks on the charge, wounding Marines on 3, striking at initiative higher than them. Like, the champion actually probably can kill his points worth. It's just, the fact that you're taking 250 to 300 points for 4 other models that kind of make it lackluster.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Ooh, moving on to
Yes.
Angel Tears.
Yes,
This is one of the more controversial units, model-wise at least. I'm just going to come out and say it. I am probably one of the few people, I really like their models. I built 10 of them today, or 10 more today. I think the paint job doesn't do it justice on Forge World. I know a lot of people dislike the masks, but for me, I think, and I think Games Workshop kind of set them up to fail, because in the books they describe them as having these silver death masks. Now, all the previous death masks we've seen have been the Sanguinary Guard death masks, right? Which look really cool. So I think when people were expecting that, so they were a little bit let down when they had the current ones, which, understandably kind of do look a little bit Noise Marine-ish. Like, they definitely look like kind of like screaming Sonic heads.
I don't know what it is, but like just everything to me is screaming like the Immortals from 300.
Yeah,
Like the army itself has very much that feel of that,
very
right?
ornate. Yeah, so model-wise, I will say I was actually impressed building them again. I think the torsos are cool. I think they've got, they've got surprisingly unique armor when you actually look at the models and whatnot. So from that perspective, I like them. I am a fan of the models. Feel free to call me crazy. I'm sure the majority of people out there are going to be like, "Roar." But when we look at them rules-wise, so they are stock Space Marines with Leadership 9 and Power Armor. Their Arc Heirloom, is Leadership 9 as well, 2 attacks. You're looking at 130 points for 5 of them, and then 15 points to add another guy to the unit, up to an additional 5. So you can run 10-man squads. Now, I think this is very in line with the errated destroyer costs, and I think these guys, again, in the fluff, these guys, the Blood Angels, don't feel destroyers, they feel the Angels' tears. And the whole story behind the masks is basically they're about to commit shameful acts in the name of the Great Angel. So they basically, when they don the mask, they relinquish their identity for that mission. so that they don't bear the guilt, basically, of using, of purging the unworthy, basically. So stock, they come with power armor, chainsword, combat blade, frag, crack, and rad grenades. So that's good. 2 Volkite Serpenta and a jump pack. So right off the bat, when you're looking at them, one thing that you find, with the exception of the Crimson Paladins, Blood Angels are a very point economic efficient legion. For 15 points, you're getting a jump pack, 2 Volkite Serpentas, rad grenades. You'd be paying well over 10 points for those in most other armies on top of their base cost. So big plus in my opinion. They also have counterattack and hardened armor. Hardened armor obviously plays a bigger role in void combat and zone mortalis, but still a buff. When we look at their upgrades, so any Heirloom in the squad may exchange their Volkite Serpenta, one of their Volkite Serpentas, for an Angel tier grenade launcher, which is a 24-inch range grenade launcher, strength 4, AP 4, 3-inch blast, rad phage, and fleshbane. So again, very good against demons and whatnot, and in custodes. You're forcing huge amounts of wounds with fleshbane 2+. So to upgrade one of those is 15 points. So pretty expensive. You're looking at 30 points a model, but it puts out a lot of damage. A heavy flamer for 10 points, an assault cannon with suspensor web for 15 points, a rotor cannon, or a heavy chainsword. And then of course the Arc Heirloom may exchange their chainsword and combat blade for a heavy chainsword, power weapon, power fist, single lightning claw, or thunder hammer, and those range from 5 to 20 points. You could also exchange either of his Volkite Serpentas for a plasma pistol. Now, again, don't forget the Blood Angel rule, where any model that can take a plasma pistol can take an Inferno pistol instead for 15 points. So you could have him rocking 2 Infernus pistols.
Nice.
And then he can also take Artificer armor for 10 points.
Right.
So they are an elite choice. It's important to note Legion Moritats may join them as if they were a destroyer squad. Also, any right of war which requires destroyers to be taken, or as a limitation, they may be included instead of, or they may be included as destroyers. So one thing that I like in 30K is versatile units. This unit is incredibly versatile. And has got access to some sick war gear. Yes, you're paying a lot of points. For 10 of them, you're looking at 300 and some points, 450 points if they're fully upgraded. With assault cannons and suspensor webs or grenade launchers, but man, they can do work. Especially if you take the, obviously you'd probably want to take Artificer armor on the Arc Heirloom to tank wounds, because there's nothing more depressing than, losing a 35-point model, to a 3-up save. But again, when in conjunction with their right of war, at least you're guaranteed to shoot with these guys, right? You're coming down first turn, you're going to get to fire. So you're going to do damage no matter what. So yeah, I think they're pretty cool. I think they're better than destroyers. I think they're better than, the other Legion's equivalents to destroyer-type units. And overall, I think, they're just a strong unit. What do you guys think?
Lots of options. Options. I mean, they've got jump packs for moving around, hardened armor, counterattack, and then the weapon options themselves. I don't think there's really nothing else that has some of these options, right?
Yeah,
so,
you think about
even base comp, right? Even base stock with 2 Volkite Serpentas, right? That's one shot with the Volkite, right?
Yeah, so it's 1 strength 5 shot with Conflagrate.
right?
So that's
You've got
two shots
two shots.
within
So
12.
even with just 10 of them, right? They're jumping down at with 20 shots. That's still and it's a relatively inexpensive unit.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
got conflagrate, let's not forget, right? So
Yeah.
20 shots that can, at strength 5 can easily turn into, if you roll well, close to as many wounds.
Yeah, so that's really really nice, right?
So,
So
uh,
I mean, I'm a huge fan. I know a lot of people like the assault cannon.
Assault
the
cannons,
dispenser
yeah.
web. Yeah, I mean, remember too, if you're using the dispenser web, it's half range, right? So it makes them really short range. So now you're at 12 inches, but 40 shots from a 10-man unit is kind of a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
I think with Rendig, right? So
this is
they
like
can
a
effectively
40k unit, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fistfuls of dice, right? We were talking about it before we hopped on because I'm building 10 right now with assault cannons. I've also got 10 with serpentas, and I'm probably going to do 10 just to have with the rad grenades or the rad phage or whatever. But one thing to note is they are a pain in the butt with malfunction. So you'd have to roll each assault cannon separately, or you'd have to get, as Andy suggested to me, 10 different colors of dice. But yeah, they're just a versatile unit. Bare bones, they're good. If you take the assault cannons, you're doubling their points with the assault cannon or the grenade launcher, but you're also probably doubling, if not more than doubling, their kill capacity, right? Like you think 10 of those grenade launchers would wreck any unit out there with Fleshbane, right? Like whether, I don't care if it's a 20-man demon unit re-rolling their invulns by their portal, I don't care if it's a 10-man custodian or custodes sentinel shield guys, you're getting so many hits, they're gonna fail saves, right? Like it's just
Yeah, absolutely.
and rad phage is nothing to sneeze at, and they're good in combat. Like they're better than some combat specific units, right? So it's important to note, right? They
To
only
attack
replace.
with their
Sorry,
close
what?
combat weapon, right? Like they start with 2 attack because of their close combat weapon. And
Yeah, they start with 2, and then they have counterattack.
Right. Yeah.
And they've got rad grenades, right? So lowering the where is it? Does he have
toughness?
Do they have rad grenades? I thought they did.
The grenade launcher has rad grenades.
Oh, okay.
No,
So
but
yeah,
they start with rad grenades as well. It says Frat Cracker and Rad.
Oh yeah. I
yeah.
was looking for a separate line. So yeah, rad grenades are great, right? Like lowering the toughness of an enemy.
Another twos on most
Yeah,
Marines.
like
Right,
they're
like-
just. And it's important to note, right? I didn't realize this actually. When you upgrade their weapon, you're only exchanging one of their Volkite Serpentas. So they still have a Serpenta and a close combat weapon.
Or a chainsword, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So they still do. So it's kind of like interesting dual-edged unit that you can actually still use in close combat to do a lot of damage against majority of units out there. Like your special units, sure, you're not going to go up against those, but against like tactical Marines, even if you don't
they'll
kill
shred
them,
tactical Marines.
yeah, you can't just a tactical Marine unit can't just charge them and expect to tie them up for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They'll die.
Exactly, right? So they're really, really good. Really good unit for what they are. You're right. Once you start upgrading them, you're paying points. But I don't know.
They're going to be a fun unit to use, 100%.
And I think again, and yes, this is assuming that you're using the jump pack Rite of War, but so many the downside of so many expensive units in this game is, what if you don't get to shoot them? What if the enemy gets to shoot you first? Now, what I love about this is you've got a guaranteed shot, right? Like unless you scatter and mishap and get sucked into the warp, at least you're going to get one round with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Definitely.
they get a thumbs up for me for sure.
Absolutely.
And that's part 1 of the Blood Angels. Tune in the next couple of weeks here for part 2 of this, where James will join us again, and we'll finish off the Blood Angels and probably go into a little bit more detail later on. Thanks again, guys. See you.